Now, I want to welcome everyone to the P.A.S. Report podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giordano. Glad you could be here. I got a great guest coming on. Before I get to the guest, make sure that you subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com. And don't forget to share this episode with your family and friends and on social media. I'm bringing on my good friend, John. He's been on before. John Stubbins, host of Indivisible. John, thank you for joining me. How's it going?
How you doing, brother? Good to see you.
You as well. And I mean, I can't complain. I'm an optimist by nature. So even though we're about to be in World War III, I'm still a generally happy person, which is a good thing.
I'm doing my best.
It's hard. I mean, listen, it's hard. What do you make of everything going on? And I know this is a loaded question. I know we could go a million different avenues, but just, given everything that's going on, what are your thoughts off the top of your head?
Well, it's a scary time. Like we were talking about before, this president is not a wartime concierge. So that's number one. Number two, he shows weakness across the board, pretty much with every move that he makes. And China, Russia, Iran, everything that's happening in the Middle East, believe me, they're taking note. They're watching him closely. And any slip-ups, and I mean any slip-ups, they're going to be looking to take advantage. You know it, and I know it. So it is a scary time. And I fear for our troops. I fear for our battleships that are in the Middle East already. It is just, it's terrifying because he put us, well, let me back up. Him and Obama put us in this position. So we wouldn't even be in this position if we didn't have an Obama and a Biden. So it's a scary time, brother. And look, with everything that's happening in the Middle East, and then you look at our southern border, it's even scarier because, look, I report on that border constantly. We hit it over the head at least twice a month with aerial footage, helicopter footage, drone footage of what the cartels are doing and all the gotaways at the border. And look, you're talking about over 109 countries of people that are slipping in to the United States with what? EMP device, dirty bomb, nuclear dirty. I mean, it's scary. They've already been going after our electrical grids. We know that. That's been happening the last couple of years. So it's terrifying. It is terrifying. And those gotaways, they weren't processed at the border. We don't know who they are, but we know darn well that many of them are from the Middle East, and they are with Islamic Jihad.
We could say definitively that we actually ended up catching 284 individuals in fiscal year 2022 that were on the terrorist watch list. Absolutely. We could say definitively that there has been 100+ known terrorists that have been able to get into the United States. And that's through DHS. They're the ones that came out with this. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's the amount of people, the gotaways, the ones that we don't know about.
That's right.
That really is concerning. And the amazing thing is, so when we look at President Biden and we look at what's going on, do you think it's any coincidence that after the failed withdrawal of Afghanistan, now I'm not someone that advocated that we should have stayed in Afghanistan. I do believe that we should have withdrew. I do believe we should have withdrew through Bagram Air Base. I do think that we should have held that air base and still provided air support to the Afghan security services.
Sure.
But do you think if they're witnessing, because I tell my students, perception becomes reality. And the world perceived America as weak, right? 20 years of war, the most advanced, sophisticated military in the entire world that the world has ever seen. After 20 years of war, and the Taliban was able to recapture that country as we're withdrawing, not even after we leave, but as we're withdrawing. And they looked at it as, well, this is the new America. Despite us winning every battle in Afghanistan, we have to make that, like, we failed politically. That's where you usually fail in war.
Absolutely.
but we won every battle. But they looked at us as weak. Do you think it's any coincidence that following the failed withdrawal that the Biden administration put forward, that Russia became more aggressive and decided to invade Ukraine, that China has become more aggressive, not only in the Pacific towards Taiwan, but people don't pay attention to the aggression that China has towards the Philippines and towards Vietnam. And then Iran, who's been completely emboldened, has people all over the world working with Maduro's regime down in Venezuela, the Quds forces down there as well, training Venezuelans. Do you think it's any coincidence that all of our adversaries have become much more aggressive following the Afghanistan withdrawal?
No, I don't. And here's the thing. Look at China with Taiwan. Okay. You know that they're testing that and prodding and poking right now. None of this is by accident. Okay. This is all by design. People that understand their World War II history understand what the axis of evil was. Okay, well, we have a new axis of evil, and it includes China and Russia and many countries of the Middle East, led by Iran through their proxies like Hezbollah, like Hamas, right? So think about the withdrawal, okay, from Afghanistan. President Trump had us getting out of there. What was it? May 1st? I think was the date. But President Trump wouldn't have withdrawn us in such a pathetic way. How much equipment do they have? And I'm talking about Islamic Jihad, including night goggles and many other pieces of equipment. How much do they have that we faultily left behind because of the way that Biden withdrew us?
And I think
how stupid is he?
What you just said is critically important. See, I'm not worried. Listen, the Black Hawk helicopters should have been blown up on our way out. Don't get me wrong. But I'm not worried about the Taliban having the Black Hawk helicopters. They try to fly those, they're crashing them. That's it. Okay. Yeah. The night vision goggles, though, that's critical. So you're talking about over 60,000 pairs of night vision goggles. That's what gives us our supremacy on the battlefield, where we can fight at night, but our enemies can't.
And Israel.
Correct. And so it's a catastrophic disaster, and people don't know, but we've given the Taliban, well, we've given Afghanistan, but we all know the money flows to the Taliban, 2.6 billion taxpayer dollars since we have withdrawn. So 20 years of war, and the Taliban is better armed, equipped, and trained today than they were prior to 9/11.
Absolutely.
And that's disgraceful. That's a pox, not just on the Biden administration. It's also a pox on most of the generals that lied to us for so many years, including the retired General Mark Milley, who at one point his mission was to train Afghan security forces, see the overseeing of training them, where we knew 1/3 of the Afghan security forces were either Taliban or drug addicts. Okay,
yeah, and Austin,
we knew that.
And I was going to say, Austin and Milley, they're so focused on wokeness and destroying our military. I mean, some of our best people have already gotten out, just like with the police forces across the United States when they decided to defund the police. It's the same thing. Look, I'm a military veteran, and I'd love to fight for my country, but I'm not going to fight for a leader like that. You got to be kidding me. He's going to get our people killed.
Yeah, and listen, when it comes to Afghanistan, it's amazing because nobody reads the Afghanistan papers that were released in 2018 through a special investigation, SIGAR. We had a special investigation into Afghanistan and reconstruction and the funding. And in 2015, General Flynn turned to a bunch of people at the State Department and the intel communities and in the military. And he said, you know, all of you keep telling me that we're winning this and the situation is stabilizing. If we're winning, why does it feel like we're losing? Right. You know, he was sounding the alarm bells. Right. But it's not only abroad that's a catastrophic disaster, it's also domestically. And we could point to the open border situation that is draining all of our resources and just the unending flow. We could look at the education system where student proficiency levels are twice below the national average.
Heck, our government, Nick, our government's been infiltrated by Islamic Jihad.
Well, but even worse than that is, to me, is the unelected bureaucrats, at least the jihadis you could identify. It's the unelected bureaucrats that are the ones that are really running things. And, you know, I know it's easy to say, you know, there's a lot of people that say, well, Biden's not really in charge. And I agree with that, right? I mean, we see what we see on the television screens. Our eyes aren't lying to us. Our ears aren't lying to us. And the rest of the world sees what we see on the television screens.
Right.
But it's easy to just put it a face and say, oh, well, then it's really Obama or Susan Rice or Valerie Jarrett running things. But the truth is, it's an unelected bureaucracy that's out of control. Now, at the same time, we're seeing the flare up in the Middle East that's leading to a catastrophic collision course of warfare. The FBI has decided that they're going to target political opponents, that they're going to target, you know, the dangerous Trump supporters, that's the biggest threat the country faces. How bad do you think the FBI has dropped the ball when it comes to foreign terrorist organizations infiltrating the United States, because they were so focused on this amorphous threat of domestic terrorism that they never defined, never explained, and just lumped parents and traditional Catholics and Trump supporters all in threat tag systems?
Yeah, well, Christopher Wray ought to be ashamed of himself. He shouldn't even be there. I mean, I can't believe the guy's still there.
Well, when he was first appointed, I'm like, why did Trump appoint Christopher Wray?
I know.
Out of all people.
The guy is a cancer to the United States, a two-tier justice system. The whole process started in 2015 when they started spying on the Trump campaign with the false FISA warrants on Carter Page.
But I have to interrupt you for a second, because I do want to talk about that, especially when we get to American Anarchy.
Sure.
But didn't it start long before?
Well,
Trump?
it did.
I mean, if we look at the NSA,
it did, but it didn't become as widespread, like as accepted. Okay, so once they started getting to the public that it was these bad MAGA Trump supporters, and they were, January 6th was like a gift to them that they could point to and say, see who they are. Okay. Meanwhile, they completely, this was all built on lies, by the way, because they completely ignore 2 years of riots, burning police stations. I mean, murder. I mean, it's just, it is mind-boggling that they allowed BLM and Antifa to just run anarchy across this country, and they said nothing. Nothing. And even now,
well, a vice president was bailing them out of prison.
Well, yeah, and not only that, look now it's BLM and Antifa with Hamas. They're out in the streets protesting. It's the same people. The same people. They want chaos. They want it to burn. They want to take over. Well, this is a power grab.
So when you see that chaos and the increase in chaos, people usually will turn to government and give the government more power, because while a lot of people preach about liberty and freedom, most don't really appreciate liberty and freedom. As a matter of fact, a lot of people,
until it's gone.
No, most people actually prefer stability. And we see that time and time again. It's part of the human condition. And so when things get chaotic, when they get crazy, we're willing to give the government, not me, I'm never willing to give the government more power. But people are willing to give the government more power, and that is the power grab. But the reason that I wanted to take it away from Trump before is because, let's face it, I mean, you know, Trump is a divisive figure, and they've made him that way. But I want people to see how widespread this really is. So if you look at 2007, the NSA, they get caught, they create the prison program that's capturing the metadata of every single American. Then you look at the IRS targeting conservatives and Tea Party groups. But fast forward to 2015, because I think that this was the biggest change. The Senate Intelligence Committee was investigating CIA abuses. The CIA was spying on sitting members of the Senate Intelligence Committee, both Democrat and Republican. When the Senate Intelligence Committee figured out what was going on, that they were being spied on, they feigned outrage, but they did nothing about it. And they're the ones with the power of oversight.
Absolutely.
So I want people to realize that it's not a conservative thing. you might be cheering on that MAGA supporters and Trump supporters being targeted, but it was Democrat senators, Dianne Feinstein, that was also being targeted under this apparatus. And we're just learning through a John Solomon report on Just the News that a lot of members of Congress are being monitored by our intel and law enforcement community. And that should terrify us because the Congress is the one with the power of oversight.
That's
now,
right.
Bringing it back to Trump, you had Senator Schumer in 2016, early 2017 on Rachel Maddow's show, warning Trump that, and he wasn't being mean. It wasn't like it was like a partisan thing. He was saying, you're being really stupid by attacking the intelligence community because they have 6 ways from Sunday to get back at you. And it was as if he's warning Trump, like, hey, you got to be careful. These are powerful people. Shouldn't we all be very frightened that this unelected bureaucratic class, the Washington swamp, seems to have like usurped the authority without anyone endorsing this or even saying it out loud?
Absolutely. It's terrifying. And believe me, the people are getting fed up. I mean, slowly but surely, people are waking up. It's been really slow to like awake that sleeping giant, but it's happening because.
Do you think part of the problem is that conservatives and Republicans like to speak to echo chambers? They don't like to reach out to ordinary vote. And I'm not talking about your hardcore progressives, right? They're never going to listen to you and I. I'm talking about independents and blue dog Democrats. Do you think that's part of the problem that we have?
I think that's definitely part of the problem. I think also you have to have a conversation's got to be a two-way thing, right? So you have to have a willing listener. And I think the more that Biden does, the more damage that he causes, I think we're getting those listeners coming to us now, okay, as willing listeners that maybe weren't willing to listen before. And they're seeing each of these little items, these details start to be uncovered. And they're like, I remembered that. And they sold that to us as Trump bad and Trump bad over here and Trump bad over here. And they're discovering that a lot of it was a fabricated version co-opted by the media that led them down a rabbit hole to basically give us a campaign of propaganda that was not real. That was a lie.
Yeah.
And they were allowed to perpetuate that over and over again for a while. That did so much damage that to repair that damage takes time and it takes a willing listener. And I think finally we're getting that willing listener.
To your point, if you look at New York State, now nobody's going to accuse New York State of being like some hardcore conservative state. Biden's numbers.
There are conservatives there, though.
There are. I'm here. So that's all that matters. But Biden, his numbers are underwater. I mean, you're talking 52% view him unfavorable and are dissatisfied with the job he's doing. Only 43 or 44% view him favorably. Now, it should be 80-20. That's what it should be.
Absolutely.
But the fact that he's underwater in New York shows that people are extraordinarily dissatisfied. Now, you go back a long way when it comes to politics. Do you think that the old school of politics still holds true? That as the economy gets worse and worse, as people's lives get more and more difficult economically, that's going to be the catalyst for them to wake up and vote out these people?
Well, I think that's part of it. I think there's another part of this that nobody talks about, and that is that this is the trajectory that we're on, by the way. Okay, we got to get off of it, but currently the trajectory that we are on, our future holds bad stuff, like civil war possibly. Okay, we are on the precipice of real problems because, look, again, we'll just take the open border as one thing. The damage that will be caused by that one detail, which is huge, can destroy our country.
Well, it destroyed the assimilation process. You can't have that many people come in that quick of a time and expect them to assimilate into American culture. And so we're going to end up
the
like
economic
Europe.
system.
Correct.
The economic system can fail and fail quickly. We can't keep borrowing dollars.
No, there's limited amount of money in the pot.
That's right. So we're in real trouble here. And if we don't right the ship, I can see a problem, because imagine this. Imagine that we go into a deep depression. Okay, think again, World War II. We go into a deep depression and parents can't work. They can't feed their families. All bets are off.
Yeah.
All bets are off.
Well, and the difference today is, so back in World War II, our debt to GDP ratio was about 133, 134%. Today, our debt to GDP ratio is about 120%, and we're not even fighting in a war, and we don't have a depression. So it's actually frightening. Like, at least
very frightening.
You can understand going into debt when you have a Great Depression and you're fighting a world war. But given where we are, it is troublesome. But aren't Republicans part of the problem? I mean,
absolutely.
Just about every single Republican I know runs on the idea of limited government and reining in fiscal irresponsibility. Yet every single budget, Republicans vote for fiscal irresponsibility. They vote just like Democrats. And when push comes to shove, they never downsize government. Well, the only president to ever downsize government was Dwight D. Eisenhower. He was the only president to actually do it. But every other president, executive power and the government power expanded.
Yeah, look, there are Republicans, conservatives, staunch conservatives that are, in Congress right now that want to change things. But you can imagine the pushback they're getting from the Democrats and the rhinos. That's what has to go. The Democrats and the Republican rhinos, they've got to go. We've got to start over again with a concept that is built on we the people, the Constitution, American values, the way that this country is intended to operate. It doesn't work otherwise. The Republic works one way. And if you divert from that, then you have something else. You don't have America. And by the way, China can fund all of those axis of evil countries, whether it be Iran, Russia, whoever. They can fund them to fight against us in a World War III.
Yeah.
Fully funded.
Well, the I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but the Chinese economy is going down, and it's going down quickly. However, that could be very dangerous, because that's when countries also get much more aggressive, because they got to distract. But I have to say, so when it comes to the rhinos, right? So I'm not a fan of rhinos and everything. However, when we look at conservatives like you and I, we're not the majority. We have to understand that. We're about probably 40% of the Republican Party as a whole. The United States, we're built on this two-sister party model where you have different factions within the parties themselves, liberal Democrats and Republicans, moderate Democrats and Republicans, and conservative Democrats and Republicans. How do we bring the rhinos back to the fold? Because we can't get rid of them. We still need to eliminate Democrats, beat the Democrats in office. But how do you bring the rhinos back into the fold to just live up to their obligations of what they're running on?
I don't believe that you can. I think that a lot of them they're already bought off. And that includes groups like George Soros and others that have come in and bought these people off. They've sold us out. So
it's why they have gold bars in their homes.
That's right. That's right. And look, ultimately, what we need to do is take that conservative movement and build it. It needs to be 90%, 90, from 40 to 90. And I got to tell you, for common sense folks out there, I believe a lot of those people are coming that way and coalescing that way. But as far as the rhinos go in the Republican Party, they can go with the Democrats because that's who they are anyway.
Well,
I don't even want them.
I could tell you right now that there's a lot of independents that are extraordinarily mad at the Republican Party not because they feel that the Republican Party has moved too conservative. It's because they feel the Republican Party has abandoned fiscal responsibility, that
I
they
agree.
feel that the Republican Party has abandoned the concept of limited government. And these are independents that I'm speaking to. Now, you are holding an event, and it's on Friday, November 17th at Trump National Golf Club. And it's to raise money for the American Anarchy documentary. So before we actually talk about the event and how people could access it, American Anarchy documentary, explain it to the audience and why it's important that you're putting this out there.
Yeah, it's really a story that is several threads. So if you think of a movie, you have several stories going on at once. Number one, you have the beginning of the FISA abuse with Carter Page. This was in the Trump campaign before President Trump got elected. And then that same spying that started in the campaign moved into the White House. So the spying didn't stop when President Trump got elected. No, it continued. So they used Carter Page as the catalyst to get into the campaign. And then once they got there, they continued on. That's why General Flynn was immediately ousted. Then it went on to Roger Stone. It just, and look where we are now. Since then, we've had January 6th. It's gotten worse and worse and worse. So we're going to tell that whole story from the beginning of the 2015 campaign all the way through to today, from the current Durham investigation. So that's all going to be happening. We're going to reveal all kinds of lies that were told to the American people. Also, the second thread is what was happening in the background with our cities, the blue cities in particular, burning with BLM and Antifa and the shadow government, the deep state, and what they did and what they're still doing. So, two stories simultaneously, and we're going to reveal the truth to the American people so that they understand where they were lied to. Not just a lie, but when and why.
And you have some pretty big speakers coming to this event. Who are some of the speakers that are going to be talking at this event?
Well, you mentioned John Solomon, probably one of the greatest journalists we have in the world. John Solomon will be there. General Flynn, you mentioned General Flynn. Tom Homan, President Trump's ICE director. Attorney General Ken Paxton from the state of Texas. They just tried to impeach him. He slammed the door shut on that effort, and he defeated all 16 articles of impeachment. But they're still coming after my friend Ken Paxton. We've got amazing musicians coming. 3 different performers. Dave Bray, USA, who does the music for my show. He's probably one of the greatest patriotic performers out there. We've got Jay Edwards. We've got Mark McKay, he's on tour with Night Ranger right now. And his lead guitarist is the lead guitarist for the Alan Parsons Project. He's amazing. It's going to be a great night of patriotism, music. We're going to have a silent auction. We've got a military grade drone that's going to be up for bid. We've got a Hank Aaron baseball. We've got a Ted Nugent guitar signed by Uncle Ted with some other merchandise, jewelry, all kinds of stuff. But it's a night of patriotism. It's a patriot palooza to help us raise funds for American Anarchy so that we can get the film to the entire population, the American people. We want you to see it before the election next year. It's critical.
And where can people go to either get tickets or to support it?
They can go to johnstubbins.com. johnstubbins.com. That's JOHNSTUBBINS johnstubbins.com. When you get there, click on events. It'll take you right to the events page, and you can buy your tickets. You can learn about the documentary. You can click on documentaries on the main menu. There's a preview trailer, a teaser for the film there as well. So you can learn about the documentary. You can buy your tickets for the event. If you want to learn about my show, Indivisible with John Stubbins, you can click on that. It's all on one website, johnstubbins.com.
And we'll have links up at the P.A.S. report to get there. John, I really appreciate you taking the time to come out and speak with the audience.